Elements is too easy. Now you might look at the bear, monkey, frogger, and crab and think, hey, that's way too easy for me. I'd never benefit from doing such simple movements. And I've been doing movements like these ever since I was a little kid. And you might be thinking that these kinds of movements would be way too easy for someone like me too. Well, they are. But I'm here to tell you and show you that when done correctly, you can make any movement as challenging as you want and give yourself a damn good workout. And today I'm going to work through a full 30-minute session from right about the midpoint of our Elements program. It's not the easiest session and it's not the hardest one either. And I'm going to talk you through how to make each of these movements very challenging. Feel free to do this workout along with me today. Let's get to it. First off, we'll go to our online platform called Praxis and we're going to open up a session of Elements. This session is called Bent Arm Bear and Monkey Stall. Now, it takes me to the intro video here where I'm giving some words of advice about the bent arm bear. I'm going to skip this and go forward to the screen where I can select the duration of my session today. Going here, you can see that we have different times. I select 30 minutes, hit continue, and it's time to prepare. Now, we always have a prepare section that includes the full tutorials of each movement, like you can see right here. Today we're going to start off with standing hip circles, and I'm going to skip the tutorial and hit start. So a prep isn't just a general warm-up. By the way, it's specifically targeting the joints that we're going to be using the most in our session today. So that's why we want to go slow and gradually deeper into these prep moves. So I want you to take notice how I'm really focused on not twisting my hips. I'm trying to keep my hips facing forward and I'm going slow with the movement, feeling things out. Now, you will notice that I'm pausing at certain places during this circle to go just a little deeper into that area. And by going slow, it allows me to see where I might have some hitches and some sticky points in my hips today. I'm going to work on going in and out of those areas a bit more to make sure I'm good and ready for what's coming up. Clock a step for a minute, do 30 seconds each side. And even though we do have the demo right here in Praxis, the purpose isn't to follow along with the video. It's really just to focus on what's going on in your own movement. So in the beginning, yeah, you'll probably need to use the demo as a reference, but over time, you're actually going to have, a better awareness of the movement and the timer's just going to be there to let you know when it's time to switch. So coming up next, then we're going to look at wrist prep. Now, you pretty much do these every single session because we spend so much time on our hands here in Elements. If you're just starting off, you want to have your fingers close to your knees, but what you'll notice is when I'm doing this, I'm actually going to bring my hands pretty far away from my legs. I've obviously been doing this for many, many years. My range of motion in my wrist, it's at a point where I can do this and also use this actually as a prep for my elbows and even my shoulders. So what I'm going to do as I'm going deeper and deeper into this movement is also focus on sitting my heels back into the seiza position, and you'll see that my toes are up here. What this is also doing is allowing me to prepare my legs and my ankles for just a little bit, which is great. You'll see that I'm performing 5 pulses to the end range before holding the stretch a little bit, and I can modify the angle of my hand slightly in order to bring the focus elsewhere in my wrists. This is how you can modify it slightly in order to give you what you need each and every day. It all comes down to having a deep understanding of the movement, and this can only happen with diligent practice of the movement. So be sure to practice these movements. Go slow and don't rush your movements. Next up, we have Quadruped Wag Tail. So what this is going to do, it's going to work to activate the core and help us for things like the monkey. It's going to be in today's session, and you'll see a lot of that. So here's the demo, and we're using obviously other people here for that demo, which is important. It's not just about me, okay? Sometimes it is, but there are a couple of things to take note of. So the first thing is you'll see that I want to keep my shoulders over my hands, and I bring my knees pretty close together. Now, I like to modify this actually, and you'll see here that I'm really pushing down and away from the ground, rounding my back. So makes it a little more challenging when I'm doing this, and that's what I'm after today with this session, is really challenging myself. I suggest in the beginning though, start off with that flat back, but then you can just really notch things up or take things up a notch or two by doing it that way with the back rounded. We're jumping right into the quadrupedal spinal circles. This I absolutely love, and honestly do these pretty much every single day because it just feels so good. what I'm doing here is, as you'll notice when I'm going through this, I kind of pause at certain places, similar to what I was doing with those hip circles, because I'm trying to feel like where I need a little bit more love in, my T-spine when I'm doing this. And I just can't stress, enough the importance of really slowing things down and bringing awareness to what you're doing. If you quickly go through the moves, you can actually miss out on important points here because you're not hitting that in range like you could be doing. So, all right, we're gonna finish up the prep here. And we're going to finish up, pardon me, actually, no we're not. I was skipping ahead. Pardon me for doing that. This is actually 30 seconds on each side that you're going to see me doing. Another way that I sometimes do this is I would do one circle and then go to the opposite direction. But the way we have things set up in Praxis is for certain movements, you'll find that you'll do 30 seconds on one side and then you go 30 seconds on the other side. So you have the opportunity to really go deeper into each of those positions. Okay, so now we're going to go into the final prep with the frog stretch. Yeah, I know it looks a little weird, but this is one of those moves that's just so beneficial. It is really going to help to open up your hips, and I actually modify it a little bit here to go even deeper into this. And the way that I like to do it, and you're seeing me right now with my arms bent, I'm on my elbows. This is what I suggest starting off with, but what I'm going to actually do here is start to extend my arms to the front, and I'm pushing into the floor as I push myself back. Now the thing here is I'm not trying to take my butt back towards my heels. Instead, what I'm trying to do is further open up my knees and drop my hips closer to the floor. This really makes this movement quite challenging. It's not something you want to jump into, but you can also see that I'm bringing my chest towards the floor as well. I'm actually going in and out of that movement, kind of feeling how things are going. Again, it all comes down to awareness. What's going on that day? What do you need? Really, that's the most important thing. So if you do something the day before and, in a certain manner, don't think that you should be doing it the exact same way today, because every single day is different. Listen to your body. All right, prep is done. It's now time to practice, and Praxis asks you how you feel. And if you're not feeling it, then you go to a light intensity session, but today I'm feeling good, so we're gonna hit the feeling good, ready to rock button. And so when I hit the continue there, what that's going to do is take me into my practice session. And so, what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at the bent arm bear. And like all the moves we have here in Praxis, we have a tutorial that's going to take you through and show you exactly how to do the movement. Since I've done this a time or two, just going to get right into it here. So I'm ready to challenge myself today, and what I'm going to do is focus on front loading my bent arm bear. What this means is just bringing my shoulders towards my hands. But the very first time that I'm working on this bent arm bear, I'm not going into the most difficult version that I can do. I'm slowly kind of using this almost as a warm-up in the beginning to do this. Now, I'm going to be doing this for 5 minutes, but that doesn't mean that I do it continuously. I take a break, I shake things out, my arms, my neck. And then when I'm feeling good, I go back and I try that movement again to do it as perfectly as possible. And what this means in terms of doing it perfectly, to me, is keeping those elbows in, making sure that I'm not holding my breath. One thing, I know it's very difficult to see here, but I am breathing through my nose with my mouth shut. That's very important for me. Nasal breathing, that lets me know that I've got a good handle on that particular level of the movement. I'm not pushing myself to the point where I'm just exhausting myself. Now here you also notice that I'm starting to go even further in terms of taking my shoulders past my hands. I'm pausing slightly. This bent arm bear version, not gonna lie, it is tough. This is a tough thing here. I'm doing a couple repetitions and then stopping, giving myself a break, making sure that I'm good for that next attempt of the movement. Now, you'll see here, each attempt is actually going to be a little bit different. And so this is where awareness comes into play. And it's just so important because you can modify the movement, make it harder or even easier depending on how you're feeling on that next attempt. For this one, I'm actually making it pretty tough on myself and really keeping that position instead of going closer to the floor and then away from the floor, almost like you're doing a handstand push-up. In this case, I'm trying to really keep myself in that position as I'm going, and it was pretty tough. Now, looking at this view, you're going to be able to see this better and see where my shoulders are in relation to my fingers, and I'm walking my feet forward in order to really go into that position. You notice my head is closer to the floor, doing a little bit of a handstand push-up to kind of go back into that in range. And the reason for this is because I knew that the previous attempt that I did was quite difficult. So it's kind of almost as if I'm giving myself a break, if you will, by going down to a little easier version, doing that, and then shaking things out. And it's going to allow me to then go deeper into this next attempt. You know, with still like 2 minutes left on the clock. And if you imagine like how many, you know, versions of this inverted press I've done, is quite a lot. And so remember, this isn't a matter of trying to just get in tons of reps. I'm actually practicing the movement. This is the most important thing here, is getting good at the movement. It's not about, you know, oh, I'm going to push myself as hard as I possibly can. Nope. What I'm trying to do is make this movement as beautiful as possible for each and every attempt. And this is why I am taking breaks here. You know, shaking my arms out, shaking my neck to release some tension there. And then I try and perform another attempt just as well as I possibly can, keeping my butt pushing up into the air, and again, not holding my breath. The breath is something that I really spend a lot of time bringing awareness to, because I know that if I start to hold my breath, or maybe I open my mouth and start breathing that way, then I might actually be pushing myself too hard. And that's not the purpose of practice. Again, if that gets to the point where you are there with your breath in terms of not owning that movement, you'll want to back off a little bit. And just because you actually back off on the movement and don't do as high a level as the previous version doesn't mean you're not getting better. What helps you to get better are the concepts and the cues involved with each movement. Keeping the elbows in, driving the butt up into the air. These are all applicable across the board when it comes to the bent arm bear. So by focusing on keeping the elbows in, pushing away from the ground, you know, having full contact with the hands on the ground, it's going to be, again, applicable to every single variation of the bent arm bear, and therefore with practice you're going to get better and stronger with that. 5 minutes is done. That's a long time. Next up we have the monkey stall. Now, typically, you know, I might skip the tutorial, but this is one case where I let that tutorial automatically play. And I look at that as an opportunity for me to take a break. So as you're watching here, I'm sitting down, shaking things out, bringing my breath back, you know, under control. I'm not breathing hard at all, you can tell here, but just using this opportunity to get ready for the next 5 minutes, of which I'm going to be performing the monkey stall. Today, I really want to challenge myself here, and so I know that I want to go into this as fresh as possible. That's the thing. Every single attempt, make it as fresh as possible. We've got that demo there. Chris is doing that demo. I want to say something real quick, and I'll mention this later, I'm sure, but don't think that your movement needs to be exactly the same as the person who's demoing that movement. The people, Chris and Rose, myself as well, we've been doing this for a very long time. All I would like for you to do when you're working through anything in GMB is to look at that tutorial as a reference point, but then bring awareness to what you're doing and try and make that movement as beautiful as possible at a level that's good for you. Time to get into my monkey stall. So, you know, when I'm working on a movement, at a higher level, I don't just jump into that movement. I actually use the first couple of attempts as a warm-up. I mentioned this earlier with the bent arm bear. You're gonna see here that my butt is actually quite high, but I'm still working on a stall. So I'm trying to do the movement as slow, not as slow as possible, but slowing it down. And so this is actually an easier variation of the monkey stall for me that I use as my prep. I'm doing a couple repetitions each way, and later you're going to see that as things get more difficult for me and as I start to get tired, I actually revert to only doing 1 repetition per side. Here, making sure that I give myself a break. I'm opening up my shoulders, especially after that bent arm bear, you know, using some stretching, some mobility during my break that's going to help me to go back and be able to do my practice, in this case the monkey stall. You'll notice here holding longer, so that stall, the pause portion, quite a bit longer than that previous attempt. And that's my goal, is slowly pausing for longer periods of time when I'm performing these movements. Rolling out my wrists, okay? Spending so much time on the wrist when we're doing this. Now, one thing I want you to take note is the setup. Each and every time that I go into a movement, you'll notice that I'm focusing on the setup. My arms are locked out, I'm pushing down into the floor, bracing the core. I exhale as I start to move. I don't want to hold my breath. Now, these are things that I practice hundreds, if not thousands of times. And I can continue to try and get better at the setup with each and every repetition I do. It's a never-ending process is what I'm saying, and to me that's actually super cool. And it's never something that, you know, I get bored with. And the reason why is because how you do anything is how you do everything. And this process of slowing down and getting the setup right each and every time carries over to how I want to do everything else in my life. And so I can feel also whether or not a move is going to happen. So for example, here in my setup, as I put my hands down, push into the floor and start to pull, I can tell whether or not I'm going to be able to hold that pause longer or shorter because I've done this so much. I have the awareness. I know, am I good to push myself a little further? Or maybe I need to back off just slightly. And because again, the setup I've just done so many times, it's almost like a micro assessment each and every time that I'm setting up for this movement. Yeah, you notice right now, I'm starting to get tired as well. And we're coming down, you know, like 2 minutes left in this. And all I'm really focused on right now is just pushing down into the ground and pulling my hips across. The other thing is I use imagery. So before I'm going to be doing a repetition, like I imagine what that should look like in my mind. I'm not just thinking about, you know, choking somebody out in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think about that a lot, but I'm not thinking about it right now, you know. Right now I'm really focused on what's right in front of me. Getting that set up, pushing down and through, trying to hold it, pulling those legs across, sitting in the squat deeply, deeply, deeply. Using that also as an opportunity to further improve my mobility. There's so many different things happening here. Of course, in the beginning, it's not going to be that way. You're just going to be focused on just trying the movement, right? Working on that movement, practicing it, trying to get better with it. But with that practice, with that awareness, comes variations of that. And so it's not just, you know, going from, you know, A, B, C, D. You'll see that there's so many different variants of A, so many different variants of B. And so therefore, whenever you look at a movement now, you realize that they're not progressions so much as they're variations, because you can modify these depending on what you need in the moment. So here we go, the setup once again. What am I doing with my arms? Locking things out, pulling those feet across. Right there, you can see it's starting to get a little tired, but I'm still really focused on making these attempts clean. I did 1. Instead of doing 2, brought it down. I do what is manageable and what I can do well. And so I knew that if I were trying to do 2 repetitions now, it's not going to happen. So I just do 1 repetition, making sure that I finish in that nice squat. Then I can give myself a little break, shake things out, and hey, we are done there. All right, so now that practice is finished, it's time for some play. Now, I'm gonna take a quick rest to check in on my breathing here, you notice, and I wanna bring my breathing back to normal. I'm feeling good right now, so hey, good. Moving on to the next thing, and it's going to be twisting bear to monkey combo. Play, I will say that this is an opportunity to really explore, and this is where you're taking movements that you're already comfortable with and putting them together. And you know, we've included these types of, you know, 2-move combos through the program once you get good at the individual moves, and they're great for further refining each move. Now, I want to show you here Rose's demo. We're going to watch this. This is actually a tutorial. She moves so well. It's just so fluid and strong. It's just absolutely fabulous. But I want to say again, yes, you know, you want to look at that and say, wow, I want to move like that. But don't think you should be Rose. Be you. So I just want you to use this demo as an opportunity to say, okay, that's what we're working towards. Then you bring the awareness back to yourself and how you're performing the movements. So right now, you know, going through this, and I want you to look right away how I just slow it way down. The first point here is I'm looking at mobility. After all of that practice, 10 minutes of practice there, I really want to kind of see, okay, where am I at now with these movements? As I mentioned before, play is a matter of taking movements you're already super comfortable with and then combining these. And the goal here really is to make them fluid, and the focus is on the transition. And so I'm not trying to do a difficult version of the movement. Here you can see I'm actually stretching things out, dropping my hips slowly to the floor, letting my hips come down as much as possible, hanging out in this movement a little bit before I bring this leg through, sitting into the squat position, and then going into the monkey. I'm not rushed at all. As a matter of fact, slowing down as much as possible. But the cool thing here is because I know these movements so well, I can start to play around with tempo. And you'll see as I start going through here, I'm gonna start ramping things up just in terms of the speed. And the quality of movement is still very, very high level. So at any point, if I feel that my level, or the quality I should say, of my movement starts to wane, then I can actually modify this by taking the intensity down or actually changing it so that I move down a level of the movement to an easier version of it. Now here, all I'm trying to do is string these movements together. I'm feeling where my body wants to go. Noticing that, you know, okay, my body kind of wants to go in this direction, and I let it go in that direction. I might actually, even though, perform the twisting bear twice before I go into the monkey. Or what I might do is actually perform 2 monkeys, okay? So even though the combo is twisting bear to monkey, you do have the opportunity to kind of switch it up depending on your space requirements. So this is another thing too. I'm lucky to have this space here, but you might not have that. Also here, you notice that I'm throwing in a couple variants of that twisting bear where I lift my leg up into the air, and that's actually going to make it more challenging. And so I'm working in that tempo, going faster into the twisting bear, bringing that leg up, holding the leg up in the air before I transition into the squat. You know, again, this is something that over the years, I've done this so much. And so play to me is exploration, and it should be for you too, because these are movements that you should know. You've worked through elements up until this point. Again, this is about halfway through the program. So these are movements that you're already going to be comfortable with, having practiced them so much. And now it's an opportunity for you to see what's possible. Little things like, what if I held my foot up in the air a little bit longer? What if, let's see, you know, I brought my butt up a little bit higher when I did the monkey. So it's not that you're trying to do everything under the sun. You're still sticking with that combo. You're still working on these movements, doing them as beautifully as possible, but by, for example, working on the tempos that I said earlier, slowing things down, maybe speeding them up a little bit, you're able to start learning more. And this is what's so cool about plays, because to be honest, this is where I find I have some breakthroughs in my movement. And that's because I'm not just focused on practicing a specific point. I let my body kind of go with it. And dare I say, you end up starting to go with the flow. And that's really what happens, is putting these combinations of movements together, these two move combos. Get really good at stringing them together. They become fluid. The transition becomes natural. Then what you can do is start, and we do this here in Elements, is to start to add in an additional movement where you start working towards a full combination of movements and it becomes a flow. The thing is, the only way to flow and be able to do that is with practice of the individual movements and practice and the play of combination of movements, being able to do that in a way that's going to be good for you. So that's why breathing, so important. All right, so that's it. So that's our play. And, we have these screens here in practice. It's actually a good way to give you like a little break before moving on to the push section. And so you'll see here that, a little bit talking about play. It's a serious business because it teaches you resilience and adaptability. Yep, great, okay, cool. So that's very important, but a lot of people just think play, I'm just gonna do the movement. You're actually, as it says, building that resilience and, as I mentioned, that adaptability. So moving on here, we have push. And with push, what we're gonna do is bring the complexity of the movement down in order to ramp up the intensity of things. This allows you to keep good form while you go through, in this case, a few rounds of the standard bear and monkey. And of course, right here, what you're seeing, what you just saw was that tutorial for the bear if you needed that again. Now, we're going into this push section right now. And the first thing off is bear. Now you're like, wait, this is an easy movement. Yes, because again, we want to keep the level complexity of the movement so that you can literally push yourself harder as you're performing this for 1 minute. I'm playing with tempos here. I'm going fast, I'm going slow, really bringing the focus. I'm pushing down and away from the floor. And this way, working on my scapular mobility as well as strength, pushing my butt up into the air. And doing this is also, of course, going to help with your flexibility. So it's not just a matter of strength, right? As you get better at these movements and you continue to push yourself, you're working on your strength, your flexibility, mobility, as well as your motor control. And so, just like I'm doing now, changing up the tempo. If I feel I can push myself harder, then push yourself harder, but always do it with good, high quality form. Now, next up, I'm taking a little break here, giving myself a breath and letting the monkey circuit, the tutorial go. But honestly, if you don't need it, then I suggest just going right into the next movement. And so that's why I hit the button there. And I'm jumping right into the monkey. And so this is the standard version of the monkey. And I'm going pretty quickly here, but if you notice, I am always focused on the setup. Again, I can't stress that enough. Make sure you're getting into the movement correctly. Here, I'm slowing it down. So another example of tempos, and you might think, oh wow, if you go slow, it's gonna be easier, right? Nope. It's actually going to be a little harder because you're pausing slightly before you go into that other movement. That means that you bring a further load to the structure because you're pausing, okay? And so this is another way how you can actually increase the intensity by slowing things down. Here, all I'm doing though, going back and forth, really focus on getting into the squat. And you notice that I'm standing up out of the squat there because I'm making it more difficult on myself. That's it. Again, this is how you can actually really challenge yourself, is find what's going to force you to work hard. Now I'm taking a break here. I think it's done. Okay, so I tried to go over and click the button, but realized, oh my goodness, I've still got a couple more sessions, or a couple more rounds of this circuit. I forgot that it's 2 rounds here. So starting off with that bear again, this is going to go for a minute. Same protocol is I'm looking at tempo. I'm going fast. I'm going to slow it down here in a little bit, focusing on that one arm. What I'm trying to do is, like I said, push myself and make this as challenging as possible. Now, you might be thinking, hey, Ryan, you know, what's going on with your breathing here? I am still trying to just breathe through my nose. That's going to make it more difficult. It's going to improve my capacity for, you know, better breathing, improve my endurance as well. So it's not just a matter of, you know, getting your pump on or something like this. What we're doing is trying to help us to be able to move better, increasing that endurance strength, looking at as well, getting to a point where this movement will eventually become actually so easy for us because we push ourselves so hard on it that it will allow us to start looking at other higher levels of this particular movement and approaching them safely, and allow us to be able to work on those. Same thing, now we're into the monkey. And, you know, just the tempos. It's making sure I have that set up. I go into the squat each and every time. And so doing that movement as beautifully as possible, but with intensity. And, you know, mentioned this numerous times, I bring the actual complexity of the movement way down so I can just continue to do that movement and push myself. Again, I added in these little pause squats in here where I stand back up out of it because I was like, you know what, I think I can push myself even harder. And that's what I want to do. I want to save this for, you know, the end and just, well, let me rephrase that, not save it. I just want to just put everything out there. You know, this is the push area, is the time for you to just lay it all out on the table. You don't want to stop. Very different than practice and even play where you're going to give yourself a break. You're not going to give yourself a break during push. You want to continue to perform that movement. We're now going to look at finishing things up with a couple stretches. And the first one is a kneeling back flexion to prone lying back extension. Say that fast 3 times. Notice that I am sweating like Mike Tyson trying to read. That's how much I'm sweating right now. And because I really push myself. So this is the demo that's running in the background, and I'm using this as an opportunity, or pardon me, not the demo, it's the tutorial. I'm letting it run in order to give myself an opportunity to bring my breathing under control. It's hard to see here, but I'm focused on deep diaphragmatic breaths, focusing on belly breathing. Yeah, through my nose, and that's it. The purpose for me is really just how quickly can I bring my heart rate, down in order to go into the next movement. Final breath here, opening things up, getting ready to get into this kneeling back flexion to prone lying back extension. Fabulous movement here. This really is in our push section because these stretches shouldn't be easy. I mean, you should be pushing yourself, but it doesn't mean that you're forcing yourself into a position. I want to be clear about this, that I'm going into a position, a range of motion that I know I can handle. I'm really slowing things down, pushing down through the floor, making sure that I get into the position in a way that's not going to injure me. Very important, right? You can still challenge yourself though by doing this, by going into that end range, hanging out there a little bit, and pushing yourself a little deeper. Not forcing yourself. That's big, okay? Big difference there. But still looking at this in terms of pushing yourself mentally and physically a little bit in order to go a little bit deeper into the end range. Going to be doing this for a minute, coming up to the end here. And yeah. Next up, we'll be looking at the seated clasped hands extension. Now, for this one, I'm going to go grab something to sit on, and I'm actually going to use a towel. So what I thought I would do today is show a little modification of this that I like to do. It helps me to go a little bit deeper, and I'm going to be honest, this is one of those moves for me personally that I have trouble with, and I do need to work more on it. You know, again, I'm sweating like crazy here, so the towel also helps with that. But using the tutorial as it's running in the background as an opportunity again to further take a break, because I want to be good and ready for this particular movement that I'm doing. You're gonna notice that my hands pretty far apart in the beginning, slowly going into the stretch the in range before I actually stop and hold that in range as a stretch. I'm pulsing into this. So I go into a little bit and then kind of like just see what's going on with my shoulders. You know, am I good to go a little deeper? And I realize, yes, I am. So I bring my hands closer together. And that's why I like the towel, because it allows me to kind of adjust the distance between my hands and ease off a little bit or bring them closer. And you're gonna see as I do this, I do have that range of motion so I can get my chest to my thighs. You don't really have to do that. But as I go, I slowly bring my hands closer and closer together, pulsing into this end range, and then I will hold it. So, you know, a few different ways that you can do this. Again, all, you know, tutorial, everything you need is all in here in Praxis. So, yeah. Let's take a look at the if you don't have Elements, get it. All right, so next up, I'm gonna be looking at a 3-point bridge. Now, I've done this so many different times, and I'm good to go. I don't really need a break, so I'm just gonna kind of jump ahead here and get going with the move. So we're going to do 30 seconds on each side. What I want you to notice as I'm doing this is that I'm not going into the full position. So I'm actually keeping my arm low here, kind of feeling things out. The focus is on my shoulder. I spend a lot of time doing, you know, shoulder related stuff, and I really want to open things up when I'm doing this. And so I'm slowly going into that in range, gradually taking my hips so that they're facing up to the ceiling, and then I can start looking back and extending that arm, really opening up for the 3-point bridge. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. I always like to have my fingers facing behind me. Helps to further open up the shoulder. And so when I'm doing this, you'll also notice that the feet are important because I'm really driving into the floor, and this is going to help to bring lift, and not just in my hips, but also in the spine. And so really extending. This is probably going to be my last one here. I'm just going to take my arm up and over as much as possible, and then turn in order to look up at the ceiling. All right, kneeling lunge. Last one here. This is our final stretch that we're going to be doing. So for this one, it's a little bit different if you're not used to the kneeling lunge. And I want you to take note here of what's going on in my hips as well as the knee. I'm not actually leaning as far forward as I possibly could. The focus is instead on squeezing the glute. And squeezing that glute, bringing the chest up in order to feel the stretch, you know, through the core all the way down, passing through the hip into the thigh, to be honest. One thing I do like to do is adjust the back foot depending on where I feel that I need a bit more love in the hips. Yes, you can have your foot directly behind you when doing that, that's great, but you'll notice on this next side here, I start off with my foot straight behind me. And if I can remember here, I actually turn my foot slightly in order to really target a different area of the hip. Yeah, there I go. And so I actually pull that foot inward. And so what that does is it just changes where you're going to feel it. Where do I feel that I need a better stretch? Where do I need to open things up today? And you know what? That's it. That is the session, but we're not done yet. And this is the thing. You got to see how much sweat I did here today. Yeah, anyway, we're not done because we're going to rate the workout today. And so this is a thing that we have in Praxis. I just love it, where you go through and it's just going to ask you to take a look at the movements that you did and what was your favorite exercise today. You know, and all the movements are in there. And then you choose one of the movements, okay? Spin or bear, right? Now we're going to take a look at what was the most challenging exercise. So in that case, you know, the monkey stall. Now this is where the magic is, okay? So we're looking at your workout. Was it relaxed, okay? Was it solid? Was it challenging? Was it maximum effort, okay? Now this really helps you because then you can go back and look at all your other sessions and see how they went. This is also where, how did you move? Was it snappy, smooth, rough, broke? This scale is quite different than other places, something that we use in GMB that's helped all of our clients to move and feel better. Then you have a copy here of what you did during the session. You can actually post this to the Alpha Posse, which is your training log, so you can keep a record of your session. That's it. That is the session. This is how it goes each and every time. Once you hit the done button there, it's actually going to take you to an overview of the session. You know, the bent arm bear, monkey stall. Let you know when you did it, what was your, the ease was solid, quality smooth. Let you know how many exercises you had, the duration of that. Ponder now is where you can, take a look at how that went. You can also go back and look at all the sessions that you've done, when you did it, and you can, then of course go back to the home screen where all of your programs live. If you think you're too strong for Elements, you actually might be right. But you may also just be fooling yourself into avoiding the basics because deep down, you know that you have weaknesses there that will be difficult to fix. Try this workout and really push yourself to make it a challenge. And if you find that you've legitimately got it covered, well, hey, good on you. Be sure to check out our other programs so that you can challenge yourself in a different way.